Hey guys, Loading Gears here. Welcome back to my Metal Gear Solid lore series. It's been a while, hasn't it? On the last episode, we looked over Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. In this episode, and possibly the next few episodes, like quite a few episodes, we will look over the brunt of the two-part game that is Metal Gear Solid 5. That is being Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Some people may not like that I'm doing this since, or that I'm doing this now since it's the most recent game and the game that most people are likely to have a grasp on. However, I really wanted to keep this series in chronological order, so without further ado, let's begin. Before starting this video, I want to say that this game's story is told in a very odd way. A lot of the missions have almost nothing to do with the story, and there's a big chunk of the ones that do have something to do with the story that only add a little bit to it, like some snippets of information at the end of the mission's shortcut scenes or cassette tapes. A huge chunk of the story is told through cassette tapes. Because of this, I will present the game in a very structured episode-to-episode manner, which will make it look more like a more list-like than other videos, which were more like reading a story off of a book. I've thought hard about how to present this story, and this is the only real way I see to do it without being confusing. Okay, so Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, as most everybody knows, is the last Metal Gear game to be made, and probably the last Metal Gear game that will ever be made, at least in terms of the main story. However, what a lot of newcomers may not know is that despite the fact that it may be their first game, and the fact that it's called Metal Gear Solid 5, it is actually the fourth game in the story, and fifth if you count Portable Ops. So considering the fact that the Metal Gear saga has 9 or 10 games, depending on whether or not you count Portable Ops, that means that the Phantom Pain is smack dab in the middle of the story. That's right, guys. If this is your first game, you have arrived in the middle of the story. You're just as close to the beginning as you are to the end. Take that as you will. Mission 0, Awakening. After the destruction of Mother Base and the crash of the helicopter during Ground Zeroes, Big Boss went into a coma. The game begins when you wake up from the coma 9 years later, 1984. You wake up in a hospital located in Cyprus, confused and disoriented. The doctor continuously calls out to you in what I believe is Greek. Once you wake up, the doctor makes sure you can understand him by asking you to move your head up and down and asking you what your name and birthday is, at which point you can give yourself a name for your online account. I'm guessing. I don't know. The online hasn't come out yet for PC. After this, the doctor attempts to inform you of your situation after making sure you're calm. He tells you that you have been in a coma for 9 years, at which point you start to have a panic attack and the doctor is forced to give you a sedative and you pass out. You wake a week later with a radio beside you playing some news about a plane crash nearby.
From the wreckage, it is stated that the reason for the crash was an as yet inexplicable fire in mid-flight. The search has ended with a confirmed death toll of 90.
The doctor tries to help you regain your strength by lifting you up so you can sit on your bed. He tells you that he has been keeping your muscles healthy through massages. 9 years of massages. He's a dedicated doctor. At this point, the doctor begins to further tell you of your situation. He reminds you of the helicopter crash 9 years ago, which caused 108 pieces of shrapnel to be embedded in your body. Some being pieces of metal, some being teeth and bones. He tells you that although most were removed, some of them remain, mainly around your heart and skull. At which point he shows you an x-ray of your head, which shows a large piece of metal sticking out of your head. Because of the metal, conducting an MRI was impossible, and extraction of the large piece of metal was dangerous because you could and would most likely suffer a brain hemorrhage if they took it out. So you're stuck with a chunk of metal sticking out of your head. It is here that he informs you of the worst news. He shows you an x-ray of your torso, except the x-ray is missing an arm. You brace yourself before looking at your arm, at which point you notice your left arm was amputated, and you begin having a panic attack again. So the doctor once again sedates you.
Calm down. Yes. Yes.
It is now 2 weeks after you have woken up. The doctor informs you that there are people looking for you and who want you dead, and that your face will have to be changed in order to protect your identity. He puts a mirror up to your face and you see Big Boss's face in it. He then tells you that he will change your appearance and asks you to tell him what you wish to look like. At this point you can create your own avatar, which will be what your face will be changed to. Afterwards, the doctor removes your bandages and tells you that your face has healed up well, and that the bandages were more for your own protection to hide you from those who want you dead. He then says that as of today, your name is Ahab, and says that you should forget your past and everything else. During all of this, Ahab can see the nurse behind the doctor being killed by an enemy soldier, but he says nothing. He then shows you a picture of Big Boss, Kaz, and 2 Mother Base members, including a medic, next to a helicopter, before bringing a mirror up to your face and telling you that the face you see before you, Big Boss's face, will become a phantom tomorrow, after giving you facial surgery. However, before this surgery happens, the enemy soldier sneaks up behind him and kills him too. In the struggle, he kicks you off the bed, leaving you vulnerable since you can't move. The killer then walks around the bed next to you and talks into her radio, saying,
"Not yet. The patient in the next bed saw my face."
At which point she picks up a gun and aims it at you. However, before she can shoot you, a patient jumps on her and knocks her down. After a struggle, he throws a bottle of rubbing alcohol which spills on her. The enemy soldier then picks you up and begins choking you, and then you black out. However, when you open your eyes, you see the soldier on fire. She falls to the ground and crawls towards you, but the patient who rescued you throws another bottle of alcohol at her, causing the flames to burst higher and making her run back and fall through a window. Ahab brings his hands up and sees he has a prosthetic now. The patient then tells you that it's time to go. When you ask him what happened to the woman, he replies that we gave her a light. And when you ask him who he is, he says,
"You're talking to yourself. You can call me Ishmael."
He injects you with a dose of digoxin, which I can only assume is a muscle simulator, in order to help you walk again. At which point you start to escape with him, slowly but surely, crawling along the ground. When you leave the room, this asshole Ishmael suggests you should take the stairs while crawling. After Ahab attempts to get up by pushing himself up a trash can and falls down, Ishmael finally realized maybe the stairs weren't a good idea, so he heads towards the elevator. However, as they approach the elevator, a kid with a gas mask in a straitjacket appears in front of it and floats up through the ceiling. Then the elevator comes down on fire and explodes, blowing back Ishmael and Ahab. While they're on the ground, a slightly familiar demonic figure rises from the flames and approaches them, but disappears when the sprinklers go off. Ishmael and Ahab then begin heading back where they came from to find another way out. At which point Ahab finally manages to get on his feet, although he needs the wall to keep himself up. After hiding from some enemies, finally you manage to get yourself together and walk normally. Ishmael and Ahab make it to a staircase and use it to head down. However, guards were coming from the top and bottom of the staircase, forcing Ishmael and Ahab to take another route through the 3rd floor into a crowded hallway. However, this crowded hallway was quickly overrun with soldiers who indiscriminately opened fire into the crowd, making it very clear that they were there to kill everyone in order to get to Big Boss. Before they could get to them, Ishmael pulls Ahab into a room to the side filled with hospital beds, which they have to move through in order to remain undetected as a soldier went bed to bed killing the sleeping patients. Finding themselves caught in a hallway full of corpses between two teams of soldiers, Ahab and Ishmael decide to play dead. However, the soldiers notice Ahab moving and flip him over. Right as they're about to shoot him, the kid with the gas mask and the demonic man on fire appears behind him. The soldiers get distracted by the man on fire and attempt to kill him. However, the man on fire seemed to absorb their bullets, grenades, and even RPGs, and it then erupted into flames, causing all of the bullets to fly back at them. After Ahab and Ishmael run away, Ishmael shoots a sprinkler with a gun he picked up from a soldier, causing it to start spraying the man on fire with water, at which point he screams and disappears again. Finally, after picking up a gun for yourself, you and Ishmael make it to the entrance of the hospital. However, multiple soldiers are guarding it, so Ishmael uses himself as bait and runs ahead of you, leaving you to fend for yourself. After evading some enemies, you head towards the door, at which point you see Ishmael outside, stealing an ambulance as an armored vehicle and have a helicopter start to move on their own. Inside the hospital, rocks start to levitate at the same time. You guessed it. It's Lil Empty Child lifting all those things from with his mind. He uses all these items to block off the hospital exit, at which point the man on fire appears behind the soldiers and attacks them. So now it's just you and the man on fire. Finally, some alone time. Or not, because you stand no chance against them. So you run away as soon as an armored vehicle rams through the debris blocking the exit. Except you don't, because as soon as the exit opens, more guards come in. But they fail completely. While they shoot the man on fire, the floating kid moves the spinning helicopter blades into them and kills them all. Finally, an armored vehicle manages to stop the man on fire by ramming into him, and Ahab takes his chance to escape. However, this doesn't stop him for long, and as Ahab is escaping, the man on fire does his eruption thing and blows him down on the ground, which causes him to black out for a few seconds. When Ahab wakes up, he's laying right outside the hospital with the man on fire walking towards him. When he manages to get to him, Ishmael finally comes to the rescue and runs him over with the ambulance. Ahab gets in with Ishmael, and they both get away as the man on fire recovers and starts blowing everything to hell. At one point during their getaway, Ishmael gets knocked out and Ahab is forced to take the wheel while avoiding gunfire, which causes him to crash, flip the ambulance over, and black out. He's going to be doing a lot of blacking out in this game. When he regains consciousness at around 3:07 a.m., he looks over and Ishmael is gone. Nobody there. As he starts to crawl out, a helicopter flies over him and spots him. But before it can attack, the floating kid appears between Ahab and the chopper and summons a giant flaming whale to eat the chopper. A giant flaming chopper eating whale. What the fuck? Anyways, after the whole whale chopper explosion happens, the floating kid and the man on fire are reunited on a flaming Pegasus. Although the kid seems to be helping Ahab sometimes, he is now after him once again with the man on fire. He begins to run away when a man on a horse rides up in front of him and tells him to get on after informing him that he's on his side. They both make a getaway on the horse while the man on fire chases and attacks them from behind on his flaming Pegasus. After a horse chase battle, Ahab and the man on the horse make it to the bridge near a lighthouse. But the bridge is destroyed by lightning as they pass through it, causing them to fall down. At this point, it begins raining and the man on fire finally decides to back off. The man on the horse helps Ahab up and reveals himself to be none other than the one and only Ocelot, the same from 20 years ago during Operation Snake Eater. He reminds Ahab that they've met before by saying,
Big boss, you know who I am.
He tells Ahab that he was given 2 jobs by a certain man. The first was to get him out of the hospital, and the second was to rescue the man himself, that man being none other than Kazuhira Benedict Miller, also known simply as Kaz. Ocelot tells him that in order to survive and stand a chance against Cypher, he's going to have to join up with Kaz and reform their private army. According to Ocelot, Kaz is being held in Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
He explains that the Soviets have invaded Afghanistan in 1980 and that the Muslims, along with Western support, were fighting back. Kaz was there to train Mujahideen rebels before he was captured by the Soviets. He said he gives Miller about 2 weeks to survive before they kill him or let him rot in a ditch. As they arrive to an overview showing the ship you'll be leaving in, Ocelot tells Ahab that training the rebels meant nothing to Kaz, and that he only did it to keep Ahab safe.
Hang on.
Chapter 1. Revenge. Once on the ship, Ahab begins training to regain his muscle mass and use his limbs, and to also get use of his prosthetic. Once he got enough muscle mass back, Ocelot handed him a new prosthetic arm, a much more advanced one with individual fingers. After a long trip from Cyprus down the Suez Canal and through Pakistan, Ahab was finally back to his old badass self. Mission 1: Phantom Limbs. On March 21st, Ahab and Ocelot make it to Afghanistan. On their way to the mission start point, Ocelot tells Ahab that the area is controlled by Soviet soldiers and that Miller has been captive for 10 days. At this point, you have 3 in-game days to rescue him before he dies. After an inspiring talk, Ocelot lets Ahab go into his own to
Let the legend come back to life.
So, cassette tapes. This is the section where I will be telling what some of the important cassette tapes say before I finish off this mission. In a debriefing cassette tape, Ocelot explains to Ahab what happened after the crash and how Eva from Metal Gear Solid 3 set things up for him to get taken to the hospital in Cyprus. Ahab asks about Ishmael, the guy who got him out of the hospital, but Ocelot continues talking about Cyprus and the people who wanted him dead. In another cassette tape, Ocelot retells the Peace Walker story as a way to refresh Ahab's memory, as the coma is said to make his memory of things a bit fuzzy. Even though it's probably mainly to refresh the memory of the player more than anything. In these tapes, he describes how Big Boss's mercenary group, MSF, had overstayed their welcome and now the whole world was after them. He described XOF, the team that took you and Mother Base down, as a Cypher strike force acting as an anti-terror unit working on the CIA. He also explained how the whole mission in Ground Zeroes was a lure in order to perform the attack. Something I'm sure we were all aware of at this point. He said that the whole attack was possible because of quote-unquote Miller's blind spot, that being Huey Emmerich. So he is in turn accusing Huey of betraying them. At the end of this tape, Ocelot says that after the helicopter crash during Ground Zeroes, the doctors didn't recognize what they were looking at when they saw Ahab's face because of the damage it had taken, and how despite everything he had gone through, he managed to come back to life full of vengeance, or as he called it, full of quote-unquote venom. At which point he gets his new codename, Venom Snake. A short tape has Snake saying how sometimes he sees colors wrong when he wakes up because of the hallucinations the doctor told him he would experience thanks to the metal in his head. Apparently this would also sometimes happen if he hit himself hard on the head, which explains why trippy things happen to the camera during the first mission whenever you got knocked back. In another tape, Ocelot talks about the secret group that he joined was Zero after the events of Portable Ops. This group was made to bring about the boss's will after her death during Metal Gear Solid 3. He reminds you of the original members of this group, which are all people that Big Boss worked with during Operation Snake Eater in Metal Gear Solid 3. These original members being Zero, whose real name is David O. I don't know what kind of last name O is. Sigint, whose real name is Donald Anderson. Paramedic, whose real name is Dr. Clark. Eva, whose real name is, well, not given. Ocelot, whose real name is Adamska. And finally, Big Boss himself, whose real name is John, or Jack, depending on who you ask. In case it wasn't obvious, this group, which even Big Boss was a part of, was the one and only Cypher, which Zero was the head of. Ocelot continues to talk about how after Snake got the first half of the legacy in Metal Gear Solid 3, Ocelot was tasked with getting the other half, and when he did, he gave it to Zero, just as Snake wanted. However, this was only because Snake trusted Zero back then. Apparently, Snake and Zero parted ways after Zero started a certain experiment called, I'm going to try to get this right, Les Enfants Terribles. I could have butchered that, it's in French. It means the terrible children, or the terrible infants, something like that. The details of this project aren't explained in this tape, however. Eva parted ways after this project as well, meaning the only remaining members were Zero, Paramedic, and Sigint. Even Ocelot left, but he just stuck around to keep tabs on Zero for Big Boss. But after a while, Ocelot and Zero just lost track of Big Boss. In a different tape, Ocelot describes that pretty much nobody knew where Zero was after Snake fell into his coma, and that Cypher as an organization has gotten huge. Ocelot describes Cypher as a great beast with Zero as its spine, but Cypher continued to grow even after Zero went off the radar. Back to the mission. Snake finds Kaz in a house of a village some distance away. Kaz was handcuffed to a pipe with a bag over his head and had a missing arm and leg. When Snake takes off the bag, he sees Kaz's swollen eyes and asks him if they did something to his eyes. But Kaz just says,
No, it's just bright as all.
At this point, Snake carries Kaz to the rendezvous point, where Pequod, their codename for their helicopter, or maybe the helicopter pilot? I'm not sure. But anyways, where Pequod would meet up with them. However, when they got close, the whole area became surrounded by a strange mist, causing Pequod to pull back. Because obviously helicopters can't land with some light mist in the area. Hearing about mist made Kaz nervous, and before he could say anything, you see some creepy humanoid figures walking towards you in the distance in a very zombie-like manner. They're referred to by the Skulls. Kaz tells you not to try and fight them, to just run away. So you run away, unless you got some real cojones and manage to fight them off somehow. Once you get away from them, Kaz tells you that they're the same unit who attacked him and his men when he got captured, and that they came for him from a mist and wiped out his men in a matter of minutes. So this is why the mist freaked him out so much. Once you make it back to the helicopter, Kaz tells you that you're headed for the Seychelles. I hope I said that right. The Seychelles being an area in the ocean where their new home was. He called it Diamond Dogs. Your new home. Your new mother base. Mission 2, Diamond Dogs. On the way to their new mother base, Kaz begins talking to Snake about his resentment for Cypher, describing himself as a parasite feeding off of Cypher. Remember, after the end of Peace Walker, we discovered that Kaz was working with Cypher, but it was just a business agreement. He didn't know that they were gonna pull this shit. He expresses his self-hate for letting himself get caught up with them, telling Snake how he will make them give back their past and pay for what they've done. At this point, they reach the Diamond Dog's mother base, and Snake gets a glimpse of his new home for the first time. When they reach the command platform, Snake helps Kaz off the helicopter, as Kaz explains that they will do any kind of work necessary to get the means and funds to take revenge on Cypher. Soldiers help Kaz walk to a gurney. He angrily pushes them off and walks there himself. Kaz continues to go off on an angry rant about destroying Cypher, and Snake reminds him that this is not about the past, it's about the future. After this, Ocelot gives you a tutorial on running Mother Base using this little gadget called the iDroid. And the mission ends. Not much to this mission.